For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled over countless star systems, their dominance so absolute that even whispers of rebellion seemed futile. The Earth, once a thriving cradle of humanity, had become a ghost of a memory obliterated by the Council in an act of unmatched arrogance. The official records claimed it was a necessary measure, a punishment for humanity's refusal to submit to the Council's laws. But the truth, buried beneath centuries of propaganda, humanity was targeted not for defiance, but for the fear they inspired, a fear that one day they could outshine the Council itself. The Earth's destruction was swift, merciless, and total. Billions of lives turned to ash in a moment, their cries swallowed by the cold vacuum of space. The Council's fleets left behind nothing but a lifeless rock and a warning to all other species: resistance was not tolerated. In the centuries that followed, humanity's remnants scattered across the galaxy like drifting embers, struggling to survive on barren moons and inhospitable planets. They were mocked, ridiculed, and treated as a defeated race, a species without a home, a people without purpose. The Council assumed that humanity would fade quietly into obscurity. They assumed wrong. What the Council failed to understand was the resilience of humanity, their ability to adapt and endure. In the shadows of forgotten worlds, humans did more than survive, they evolved. Their ingenuity grew sharper, their resolve hardened by centuries of suffering. They forged alliances in the unlikeliest of places, trading with outcast species and scavenging forgotten technologies from the ruins of ancient civilizations. Over time, they pieced together a network of hidden colonies, united not by a central government but by a shared dream: revenge. For centuries, this network grew in secret, hidden from the Council's ever-watchful eyes. Humanity had learned to cloak its movements, to speak in whispers and move in shadows. And as their numbers grew, so did their power. Forgotten sciences were rediscovered, weapons of unimaginable strength constructed in hidden shipyards, and fleets built in silence, their engines muffled by the vastness of space. The descendants of Earth survivors had become something new, something the Council could never have anticipated, a people forged in fire, united by loss, and driven by a singular purpose. The final catalyst came not from humanity itself, but from the Council's arrogance. Believing humans to be no more than a scattered nuisance, the Council continued its expansion, annexing systems and crushing resistance wherever it arose. But in their greed, they overreached, invading a neutral system that unknowingly housed one of humanity's secret colonies. The attack was meant to be routine, a simple show of force. Instead, it lit a spark that would ignite a galactic wildfire. The first retaliation came swiftly and without warning. A Council fleet patrolling a distant trade route was ambushed and annihilated, its destruction broadcast across the galaxy as a message humanity had returned. The Council dismissed it as an isolated incident, a fluke that would be dealt with easily. But as more fleets disappeared, more planets fell silent, and whispers of human vengeance spread like wildfire. The truth became undeniable. Humanity was no longer the broken, scattered race the Council had destroyed centuries ago. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they were coming for the Council. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity began its campaign, systematically dismantling the Council's control. Their strategies were precise, their attacks surgical. Entire sectors fell as human fleets appeared and vanished like phantoms, striking with devastating precision before retreating to the safety of their hidden stronghold. But this was no mindless war of destruction. Humanity's leaders, a coalition of brilliant tacticians and engineers, had a clear goal, not just to defeat the Council, but to take their place, to reclaim the power that had been stolen from them. The Council's arrogance quickly turned to panic as they realized the scale of the threat. Desperate to regain control, they deployed their most advanced fleets and enlisted the help of allied species. But humanity was always one step ahead, their movements impossible to predict. The galaxy's greatest military minds were outmatched by the ingenuity and determination of a species that had spent centuries preparing. Now, on the eve of their greatest battle, humanity's fleets gathered in the heart of what was once Council territory, their ships silhouetted against the burning remnants of the Council's once impenetrable defenses. Among them were the descendants of those who had watched Earth burn, their faces hardened by generations of struggle, but lit with a fierce determination. They had not just survived, they had thrived. And now they stood on the precipice of victory, ready to erase the legacy of those who had sought to destroy them. But even as the final battle loomed, a question lingered in the air, unspoken but heavy with meaning. Was this truly about revenge? Or was it something more? As humanity prepared to strike the final blow, they were faced with a choice: to become the very tyrants they had fought against, or to forge a new path, one that honored the memory of those lost but looked toward a future of unity and strength. The answer remained uncertain, the weight of the decision resting on the shoulders of those who had led humanity from the ashes. And as the first shots of the battle rang out, one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. As the fleet of humanity's warships loomed over the former core worlds of the Galactic Council, a silence hung heavy in the void. It was the kind of quiet that preceded storms, a moment stretched thin with the weight of history and vengeance. The gathered ships were a testament to human resilience, each vessel a work of both art and destruction. The designs varied, some built for speed and precision strikes, others bristling with weaponry capable of obliterating entire cities. Each bore the scars of countless battles, yet they all carried the same insignia: a fractured earth encircled by flames. It was a symbol of defiance and rebirth, one that sent shivers down the spines of anyone who dared to oppose them. For most of the galaxy, the sight of the fleet was incomprehensible. How had humanity, a race believed to be all but extinct, amassed such power? The Council's records had long painted humans as a scattered and primitive people, a lesson to other species about the cost of rebellion. That illusion had been shattered in a matter of months. Rumors spread like wildfire across the galaxy, each tale more unbelievable than the last. Some said humans had discovered ancient technologies from long-dead civilizations. Others whispered of alliances with outlawed artificial intelligences. The truth was more complex and far more unsettling. Humanity's rise had been anything but simple. The survivors of Earth's destruction had been scattered across hostile worlds, many of which seemed determined to break them. Entire generations had been born into hardship, their lives a constant battle against starvation, disease, and the unyielding forces of nature. But those challenges had forged a species that was resourceful, unrelenting, and driven by a singular goal: survival. When food was scarce, they found ways to grow crops in soil that others deemed barren. When shelter was insufficient, they built underground cities that could withstand planetary storms. And when they were hunted by the Council's enforcers, they learned how to disappear, how to fight, and how to win. This was the foundation of their vengeance, a fire that burned across centuries. From the ashes of Earth, they had rebuilt not just their civilization, but their identity. They were no longer the idealistic humans of old, naive enough to believe in the inherent fairness of the galaxy. These humans had become something else, something the Council had never anticipated, architects of their own destiny. And as they spread across the stars, their influence began to grow. It started with whispers in the outer systems, places where the Council's grip was weakest. Small, hidden colonies became bustling hubs of trade and innovation, drawing outcasts and dissidents from across the galaxy. These settlements operated in secret for decades, trading advanced technology and rare resources under the Council's nose. But their success wasn't just built on human ingenuity. Humanity had made allies in the unlikeliest of places, species abandoned or oppressed by the Council, each with their own reasons to fight back. One of these allies was the Khaedron, a nomadic race of brilliant engineers who had once been enslaved by the Council. Their expertise had helped humanity construct a fleet capable of challenging the galaxy's most powerful forces. Another ally, the Osirai, were known for their espionage and mastery of information networks. They provided humanity with intelligence that allowed them to strike at the Council's weakest points. Together, this coalition became an unstoppable force, driven by a shared hatred of their oppressors. But alliances were not without their challenges. Mistrust lingered between the species, and tensions often flared. Humanity's reputation as a warlike and unpredictable race made them difficult partners, and many questioned their true intentions. Were humans seeking justice, or were they simply replacing one form of tyranny with another? Even within humanity's own ranks, debates raged about the morality of their campaign. Some believed they should focus on building a better future, while others argued that vengeance was the only path forward. These divisions were exemplified by two of humanity's leaders, a seasoned strategist whose every decision was calculated for maximum impact, and a younger, idealistic voice who argued for restraint. Their disagreements were fierce and public, yet their shared goal kept them united, at least for now. The fleet's journey to the Council's core worlds had been fraught with challenges, each victory hard-won and costly. But as they drew closer to their ultimate target, the stakes only grew higher. The Galactic Council, though weakened, was not yet defeated. Its core worlds were protected by a fleet of unparalleled strength, bolstered by weapons humanity had never encountered before. These defenses were designed not just to repel attackers, but to annihilate them entirely. The Council had grown desperate, and desperation made them dangerous. They called upon their allies, promising rewards to any species willing to fight by their side. But the Council's history of exploitation and betrayal left them with few willing supporters. Most species chose neutrality, watching from the sidelines as the conflict unfolded. As the human fleet approached the heart of the Council's territory, the galaxy held its breath. The final confrontation was inevitable, but its outcome remained uncertain. Humanity's leaders were well aware of the risks. Victory would cement their place in history, but failure would mean annihilation, not just for them, but for every species that had dared to stand with them. The weight of that responsibility was almost unbearable, yet it was one they had carried for generations. Among the fleet were soldiers who had never known peace, their lives defined by war. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships, their hands stained with grease and blood. Civilians, too, played their part, offering support in whatever ways they could. Every person aboard the fleet understood the stakes. This was not just a battle for territory or power. It was a battle for the right to exist, to carve out a future that was their own. In the Council's core worlds, panic was spreading. The once proud rulers of the galaxy now faced an enemy they had underestimated for far too long. Council meetings devolved into shouting matches, their leaders scrambling to devise a strategy that could halt humanity's advance. But no matter what plans they made, one fact remained clear: they were fighting an enemy with nothing to lose. As the fleet prepared for its final push, a strange signal was intercepted, an encrypted message originating from deep within the Council's territory. The content of the message was unclear, but its sender claimed to possess information that could change the course of the war. Some believed it was a trap, a desperate ploy by the Council to sow discord among the human ranks. Others saw it as an opportunity, a chance to gain an advantage in the coming battle. The decision was made to investigate despite the risks. A small team was dispatched to the source of the signal, their mission shrouded in secrecy. What they found would change everything. Deep beneath the surface of a forgotten Council world lay a hidden facility, its halls filled with relics of a time long past. Among the artifacts was a device unlike anything they had ever seen, an ancient weapon, its purpose shrouded in mystery. The discovery raised more questions than answers, but one thing was certain: the stakes of this conflict were far greater than anyone had imagined. And as the fleet prepared to strike, the question lingered in everyone's mind: was humanity truly prepared for what was to come? The answer would determine not just the fate of the Council, but the future of the entire galaxy. The fleet hung on the edge of the final assault, every crew member and soldier tense as they awaited the signal. In the command ship's war room, the air was thick with urgency and controlled chaos. Screens flickered with data streams, showing the layout of the Council's core defenses. Every detail was scrutinized, every possible scenario calculated. The core worlds had been fortified beyond imagination, layer upon layer of planetary shields, orbital weapons platforms, and a massive fleet standing ready to repel any intruder. It was a fortress, meant to be impenetrable, yet here humanity stood, prepared to defy the intercepted message and the discovery of the ancient weapon loomed over their plans like a dark cloud. The artifact, its surface etched with markings from a language long lost to time, pulsed faintly with an unnatural energy. Scientists aboard the fleet worked tirelessly to uncover its secrets, but its purpose remained maddeningly elusive. Some believed it was a weapon capable of turning the tide of battle, while others feared it might unleash something far worse. The debate grew heated as the hours ticked by, but there was no time to waste. They had to decide whether to use it or destroy it before the battle began. The tension was palpable as the lead strategist stepped forward, addressing the gathered crew and officers. They spoke with a calm authority that belied the storm brewing inside them. This was no ordinary battle. It was a moment that would define the future of humanity and the galaxy itself. Every move they made, every decision, carried the weight of countless lives. There could be no hesitation. The plan was simple in concept, but harrowing in execution. Strike hard and fast, exploiting weaknesses in the Council's defenses before reinforcements could arrive. But nothing about this would be easy. Across the fleet, soldiers prepared themselves for the coming storm. Some cleaned and reassembled their weapons with practiced precision, their hands steady despite the gravity of the situation. Others sat in quiet reflection, clutching small tokens of home reminders of what they were fighting for. in one corner of a bustling hangar. They had been born in one of the hidden colonies, raised on stories of Earth and the Council's betrayal. For them, this was not just a battle. It was personal. The Allied forces, Cadran engineers, Osari spies, and others who had joined humanity's cause stood shoulder to shoulder with their human counterpart. The bonds forged in the fires of war were evident as they exchanged words of encouragement and final instructions. Though their languages and customs differed, they shared a common understanding. This was their moment, their chance to reshape the galaxy. Failure was not an option. In the heart of the Council's territory, panic began to take hold. The Council's leaders, once so confident in their power, now scrambled to maintain control. They issued frantic orders to their fleets, their voices cracking under the strain. For the first time in millennia, they faced an enemy they could not underestimate. Reports of humanity's resilience and cunning had reached their ears, and the realization was sinking in. They were fighting a force that refused to be broken. The Council's military commanders, however, were not so easily rattled. They were veterans of countless campaigns, their strategies honed over centuries. They knew the stakes and were prepared to defend their core worlds at any cost. Yet even they could not deny the unease that crept into their thoughts. Humanity's fleet had grown far more formidable than they had anticipated, and the unknown weapon now in their possession only deepened their fears. Despite their bravado, cracks were beginning to form in their resolve. As the human fleet closed in, they encountered the first line of defense, a vast minefield spanning light years. It was a deadly labyrinth designed to cripple any invading force, but humanity was prepared. Using advanced scanning technology provided by the Osari, they navigated the treacherous field with remarkable precision. Even so, the tension was unbearable. One wrong move could spell disaster, and every crew member held their breath as the ships inched forward. The first explosion came without warning. A mine detonated just ahead of the fleet, sending a shockwave through the formation. The blast rattled nerves but served as a stark reminder of the stakes. They pressed on, their resolve unshaken. When they finally emerged from the minefield, they were met with the Council's outer fleet. Hundreds of warships, each bristling with weapons, moved to intercept them. The space between the two forces became a battlefield, lit by the flashes of energy weapons and missile trails. The clash was fierce and chaotic, with ships maneuvering in intricate dances of attack and defense. Humanity's fleet fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Their unity, a stark contrast to the Council's fragmented ranks. But even as they pushed forward, losses mounted. Each ship destroyed was a reminder of the cost of. In the chaos of battle, the team investigating the ancient weapon made a breakthrough. They discovered that the device was not a weapon in the traditional sense, but something far more profound, a key. It had the potential to unlock a hidden power buried deep within one of the Council's core worlds, a power that could tip the balance of the entire war. But the implications were staggering. Using the key could unleash something they couldn't control, something that might destroy both sides. The decision weighed heavily on their leaders, who now faced an impossible choice. As the battle raged on, the human fleet pushed ever closer to the core world's planetary shields. Their strategy relied on overwhelming the Council's defenses before reinforcements could arrive, but time was running out. The shields were nearly impenetrable, a testament to the Council's technological superiority. To breach them, humanity would need to deploy their most dangerous weapon, a prototype device capable of generating a concentrated energy pulse. The device had never been tested on this scale, and its activation carried enormous risks. But there was no alternative. The countdown began, and the fleet held its position as the device charged. Council forces, realizing the threat, launched a desperate counterattack, throwing everything they had at the human ships. The battlefield became a maelstrom of destruction, with ships on both sides reduced to debris. Despite the chaos, the human fleet held firm, their determination unyielding. When the device finally activated, the resulting pulse was blinding, cutting through the shields like a blade. The path to the core world was open. But as the fleet moved in for the final assault, a new signal appeared on their sensors, one that sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened soldiers. It was a massive energy signature, unlike anything they had encountered before, emanating from the core world itself. The ancient key had been activated, and whatever lay beneath the surface was stirring. Both sides paused, their conflict momentarily overshadowed by the unknown threat. Humanity's leaders exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their choices pressing down on them. The battle was far from over, but now a new question loomed. Had they unleashed something far worse than the Council? And if so, could they stop it before it was too late? The answer remained just out of reach, hidden in the heart of the Council's most guarded secret. As the fleet prepared for the next phase of their mission, the stakes had never been higher, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The silence that followed the activation of the ancient key was suffocating. Every ship in the fleet, both human and Council, seemed frozen in the moment, their crews staring at the data streams flooding their consoles. The energy signature emanating from the core world began to grow, its readings surpassing anything previously recorded. Whatever lay buried beneath the surface was awakening, and it was clear that no one, neither humanity nor the Council, had truly understood the forces they were toying with. The air in the human command ship was thick with tension as officers scrambled to analyze the signals, their voices filled with urgency. This was something far beyond their comprehension, and it was about to change everything. Just as the human fleet began to regroup, preparing to descend on the core world and claim the source of the energy, an unexpected transmission echoed through their comm systems. It wasn't from the Council, nor was it a signal they recognized. It was ancient, fractured, and deeply unsettling. The sound was less like a voice and more like a force, resonating directly within their minds. It spoke of balance, of a broken order that had been disrupted millennia ago. Whatever the key had activated, it wasn't just a weapon or a dormant power. It was a sentinel, a guardian of an ancient galactic order that predated even the Council. And it was angry. The realization struck like a hammer blow. The Council's deepest secret wasn't just their tyranny over the galaxy or their decision to destroy Earth. It was that they had been custodians of this ancient entity, keeping it dormant to maintain their own power. In their arrogance, they had believed they could control it. Now, humanity's desperate bid for vengeance had unleashed it, and no one knew what it wanted or what it was capable of. The tension between the humans and the Council suddenly felt insignificant in the face of this new threat. The focus shifted from conquest to survival as the entity began to stir, its energy spreading like wildfire across the core world and out into the surrounding. The ground beneath the Council's capital city trembled as cracks spread across the surface of the planet. From orbit, the human fleet watched in awe and horror as massive tendrils of energy erupted from the surface, reaching out into space like living things. The Council's defensive fleet, once so formidable, now found itself under attack by something far beyond their understanding. Ships were ensnared by the tendrils, their systems overloaded and their crews helpless as the energy consumed them. The human fleet, initially paralyzed by the spectacle, quickly realized that they were next if they didn't act. The command crew debated their options, their voices rising as fear and desperation set in. Should they retreat and abandon the mission? Or was there still a way to turn this to their advantage? Meanwhile, on the surface of the core world, the ancient sentinel continued to awaken. Its form was not entirely physical. It existed as both energy and matter, a fusion of technology and something far older. It began to rebuild itself, drawing power from the planet's core and the surrounding systems. The Council's leaders, trapped in their underground bunkers, realized the gravity of their mistake. They had hidden the truth from the galaxy for millennia, but now their hubris was laid bare. They sent a desperate plea for negotiation to the human fleet, acknowledging that neither side could survive what was to come if they didn't work together. It was an unprecedented move, and one that humanity's leaders greeted with suspicion and anger. How could they trust the very people who had destroyed Earth? As the leaders debated, a small team of human and allied operatives volunteered for a daring mission to infiltrate the core world and shut down the Sentinel before it fully regained its power. Among them were scientists, soldiers, and even a Khaedran engineer who claimed to have knowledge of ancient artifacts. Their plan was simple in concept, but harrowing in execution. They would use the key, now understood to be a control mechanism of sorts, to interface with the Sentinel and either deactivate it or contain its energy. But no one knew if it would work, or if they would even make it back alive. The mission began under the cover of the chaos enveloping the Council's fleet. The small infiltration ship, equipped with advanced cloaking technology, descended to the planet's surface, weaving through the storm of energy tendrils. Inside, the operatives were silent, each lost in their thoughts. They knew what was at stake, but the enormity of their task was almost too much to bear. The ship landed in the shadow of a massive energy spire, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. As they stepped onto the fractured ground, the team felt the weight of the Sentinel's presence pressing down on them. It wasn't just a machine, it was alive, and it was aware of their arrival. The journey to the core of the Sentinel was like walking through a nightmare. The landscape was a fusion of alien architecture and raw energy, constantly shifting and pulsing as if it had a will of its own. The team encountered resistance in the form of automated defenses constructs made of pure energy that moved with terrifying speed and precision. The soldiers fought bravely, but the odds were overwhelming. For every construct they destroyed, 2 more appeared. The mission quickly became a desperate race against time, with the team taking heavy losses as they pressed forward. Back in orbit, the human fleet faced its own challenges. The Sentinel's energy had begun to disrupt their systems, causing malfunctions and communication breakdowns. Ships that ventured too close to the planet were pulled into the tendrils and lost. The Council's fleet, once their greatest adversary, was now their reluctant ally as both sides struggled to survive. The uneasy truce held for now, but tensions ran high. Every moment spent waiting felt like an eternity, and the leaders knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on the success of the infiltration team. As the operatives reached the heart of the Sentinel, they found themselves standing before a massive structure part machine, part living organism. The key began to glow, resonating with the energy of the Sentinel. The Khaedran engineer stepped forward, their hands shaking as they prepared to interface with the structure. But just as they began, the Sentinel's voice filled the chamber, resonating with a power that brought them to their knees. It spoke of betrayal and destruction, of a galaxy that had forgotten its purpose. It accused both humanity and the Council of being unworthy stewards of the stars. And then, in a chilling twist, it offered a choice: join it and create a new order, or be consumed. The offer sent shockwaves through the team and the fleets above. Some saw it as an opportunity to end the cycle of war and create a new future, while others saw it as a trap that would lead to their destruction. The clock was ticking, and the operatives had to decide quickly. The Cadron engineer hesitated, their hands hovering over the interface. The choice was theirs, but the consequences would be felt by the entire galaxy. The chamber pulsed with a life of its own, the Sentinel's voice resonating through every fiber of the team's being. The Cadron engineer, trembling under the weight of the Sentinel's ultimatum, looked back at the others. There was no time for a lengthy discussion. The Sentinel's growing power was evident in the chaotic energy surges visible even from orbit. The human fleet and the Council's remaining ships were barely holding together, their systems faltering as the Sentinel's reach expanded. Above, alliances forged out of necessity teetered on the edge of collapse as mistrust bubbled under the surface. Every second loss brought the galaxy closer to total annihilation. The team debated furiously, their voices rising over the hum of the Sentinel. Some argued for using the key to shut it down entirely, but others saw the potential in the Sentinel's offer. Could they really take the risk of joining an entity so powerful? One that had its own ancient agenda? Yet what if destroying it wasn't even an option, and the attempt to do so only angered it further? The engineer's hand hovered over the interface as they struggled to decide. The Sentinel, seemingly growing impatient, surged its energy outward, causing the walls around them to shift and glow ominously. The tension was unbearable. Then came the twist, one that no one had anticipated. The key began to hum louder, resonating with a frequency that wasn't dictated by the Sentinel. It wasn't just a control mechanism. It was a beacon, a call to something else entirely. The engineer stepped back, startled, as the key activated on its own. The Sentinel let out a deafening roar, one that sounded less like anger and more like fear. The ground beneath the team began to quake violently, and suddenly, a second energy source erupted from the planet's core, one that seemed to rival even the Sentinel's power. From orbit, the human and Council fleets watched in stunned silence as the energy spike split the planet's surface. A massive structure began to rise, sleek, dark, and clearly not of the Sentinel's design. It was ancient, yes, but its lines were sharper, its movements more calculated. Whatever had been awakened by the key was not an ally of the Sentinel. It was something else entirely, a counterbalance to the force humanity had unwittingly unleashed. The Sentinel's voice faltered, its earlier arrogance replaced with desperation. This new entity, whatever it was, wasn't here to negotiate. The infiltration team barely managed to hold their footing as the ground shifted beneath them. The Cadron engineer, stunned but instinctively curious, scanned the new structure with their equipment. The readings were incomprehensible, but one thing was clear. The Sentinel and this new force were deeply connected, locked in some kind of ancient rivalry. The Sentinel, now visibly struggling, turned its attention away from the team, focusing all its energy on this rising adversary. The team realized they had a brief window to act, but what could they do in the face of such incomprehensible power? As the two titanic forces clashed, their energies colliding in a dazzling display of light and destruction, the team made a desperate decision. If they couldn't destroy the Sentinel, perhaps they could trap it. Using the key's unexpected activation, they theorized they could force both entities into a dormant state, sealing them together and preventing either from wreaking havoc on the galaxy. It was a long shot, but it was the only plan they had. The engineer, now more resolute, reapproached the interface. Guided by the key's resonant frequency, they began to input commands, their hands steady despite the chaos around them. The Sentinel realized what was happening and turned its attention back to the team. Its voice, now filled with panic, boomed through the chamber, begging them to stop. It promised power, peace, even the return of Earth itself if they would abandon their plan. But the team wasn't swayed. They knew better than to trust a force that had been hidden and feared for millennia. The engineer worked quickly, the interface responding with an eerie precision. The Sentinel's energy flared wildly, but it was clear it was losing. Above, the fleets watched as the core world's surface began to stabilize, the chaotic tendrils of energy retreating. But just as relief began to set in, the final twist unfolded. The second entity, the one they had assumed to be an ally in their plan, suddenly turned its attention toward the fleets. It wasn't here to save anyone. It was here to ensure its dominance. The Sentinel, in its desperation, had been truthful about one thing: balance. These forces weren't good or evil. They were simply forces of nature, each seeking to tip the scales in their favor. The galaxy was just collateral damage in their eternal struggle. On the planet's surface, the team realized they had to adjust their plan. They couldn't just seal the Sentinel, they had to seal both entities together, locking them in their eternal battle and sparing the galaxy from their wrath. The engineer made the necessary adjustments, but the process required more energy than the key alone could provide. Someone would have to manually trigger the final sequence, staying behind as the rest of the team escaped. Without hesitation, one of the soldiers volunteered. They shared a brief, somber moment with the others before stepping into the control chamber, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. The team raced back to their ship, the ground collapsing around them as the Sentinel and its rival clashed with increasing ferocity. The soldier activated the sequence, their voice crackling over the comms as they bid the team farewell. The ship barely made it off the surface as the energy within the core world reached critical levels. From orbit, the fleets watched as the planet imploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking both entities with it. The key, now inert, was all that remained of the ancient forces that had threatened to destroy them all. The human and council fleets, battered but alive, stared at the void where the core world had once been. The uneasy alliance dissolved as quickly as it had formed, but the events of that day left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Humanity had proven its resilience, but it had also learned a harsh lesson about the dangers of tampering with forces beyond its understanding. The Council, humbled by their failure to control the Sentinel, retreated to rebuild and reconsider their policies. The galaxy, scarred but still standing, began to piece itself back together. As the human fleet began its journey home, the surviving members of the infiltration team reflected on what they had achieved and what they had lost. The galaxy would remember their actions for generations to come, but for them, it was the faces of those they had left behind that lingered in their minds. The key, now a dormant artifact, was placed in a secure vault, its mysteries unresolved, but no longer an immediate threat. And as the stars stretched out before them, humanity prepared for a future shaped by their triumphs, their mistakes, and the unyielding determination to survive. The journey back to the Terran fleet's home base was quiet, almost eerily so. The adrenaline that had carried the infiltration team through their harrowing mission was now fading, leaving behind a heavy silence. Each member of the crew was lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the enormity of what had just transpired. The soldier's sacrifice, weighed heavily on them, a stark reminder of the cost of survival and victory. The glow of distant stars through the viewport seemed dimmer somehow, as if even the universe itself mourned the lives lost in the battle. The Council's retreat had been swift, their once proud fleets limping away to distant sectors. The cracks in their unity were visible now, and whispers of dissent among their member civilizations were spreading. The destruction of the Sentinel and its rival had shattered the myth of their infallibility, exposing the deep flaws in their governance and their reliance on control rather than cooperation. For the first time in millennia, the Council's grip on the galaxy was loosening, and the prospect of a new era was on the horizon. For humanity, the victory was bittersweet. They had avenged Earth, yes, but the revelation of the Sentinel's origin and the true scale of the galaxy's dangers left them with a profound sense of unease. The destruction of the core world had been a necessary act, but it was also a stark reminder of the delicate balance that held the galaxy together. Humanity had proven its strength and resilience, but it had also learned the dangers of hubris. The key, now inert and stored in the fleet's most secure vault, was a symbol of that lesson, a reminder of the power they had unleashed and the responsibilities that came. As the fleet neared their destination, the surviving members of the infiltration team gathered in the ship's common area. The atmosphere was somber, but there was also a sense of camaraderie that hadn't been there before. They had faced unimaginable odds together and come out alive, and that bond was unshakable. The engineer, who had played such a pivotal role in the mission, spoke up, their voice steady despite the weight of their words. They reflected on the choices they had made, the risks they had taken, and the lives they had lost. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a necessary one. Each member of the team shared their thoughts, their memories, and their hopes for the future. It was a moment of catharsis, a way to honor the fallen and begin the process of healing. When the fleet finally reached human space, they were met with a hero's welcome. The news of their victory had spread quickly, and the entire sector was abuzz with celebration. But for the crew, the cheers and accolades felt hollow. They had seen the cost of their actions up close, and they knew that the road ahead would be anything but easy. Humanity's return to the galactic stage was a double-edged sword, and they would need to navigate it carefully if they were to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. The key was placed under the highest security, its secrets studied by the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Scientists, historians, and philosophers alike debated its significance and the implications of its existence. The events of the core world had raised more questions than answers, and the search for those answers would likely take generations. But for now, the key was safe, and the galaxy was free from the Sentinel's influence. As the weeks turned into months, the galaxy began to heal. The Council, weakened but not defeated, sought to rebuild its alliances and restore order. But the cracks in their unity remained, and new voices began to emerge, calling for change. Among them were those who saw humanity's actions not as a threat, but as a call to action, a reminder that the galaxy could no longer afford to be divided. These voices grew louder with each passing day, and a movement for reform began to take shape. For the infiltration team, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. They were hailed as heroes, but they shied away from the spotlight, choosing instead to focus on their own recovery and reflection. Each member found their own way to honor the soldiers' sacrifice, whether through their work, their relationships, or their commitment to a better future. The bonds they had forged during the mission remained strong. The story of humanity's return to the galactic stage became a legend, a tale told and retold across the stars. It was a story of resilience, of sacrifice, and of the unbreakable spirit of a people who had faced annihilation and emerged stronger. But it was also a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of balance. The lessons of the Sentinel and its rival would not be forgotten, and they would shape humanity's future in ways that no one could yet predict. Years later, the engineer found themselves standing before the vault that held the key. They had been asked to join the team studying its mysteries, and while they had initially hesitated, they had come to see it as a way to honor the soldier's memory. As they looked at the dormant artifact, they felt a sense of both awe and responsibility. The key was a reminder of what they had accomplished, but it was also a challenge, a call to continue seeking knowledge, to strive for understanding, and to ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the heart of that change. They had proven that they could stand on their own, but they had also shown that they were willing to fight for a future where all civilizations could coexist in peace. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be setbacks along the way, but the infiltration team and the entire fleet knew that the journey was worth it. They had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, and they were determined to build a future worthy of the sacrifices they had made. As the engineer turned away from the vault, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but humanity had proven that it was capable of meeting those challenges head-on. With their allies by their side and the lessons of the past to guide them, they were ready to face whatever came next. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility, and humanity's journey was far